We did a lot of work to put this together, and I hope it'll bring some good stuff. So who the heck am I? I'm what they call a lifer. I've been doing marketing strategy my entire adult life for my own companies. This is my fourth one, most related in marketing, one in education. My main gig these days is a fractional chief marketing officer. So we do marketing execution plans. A lot of it is pulling the things together, whatever they are, to get the execution up and running and actually moving forward. Been self-employed my whole life. I'm younger than the photo implies. Who are you? Own a small company that's successful, but growth maybe not what you expect, maybe flat, maybe declining. It's not a core capability, this marketing thing, whatever it is. It's more like a necessary evil expense, and it seems like an expense, and it is an expense, right? Of course, I'll be arguing that it's an investment. So we're not talking about in terms of accounting standards. We're talking about whether it makes you money or not. But most people, it's not making them money, so it's an expense. The majority of your business comes through brute force sales, is what I call it. Knocking down doors, or relying on word of mouth or other passive types of things like referrals, which are great. And believe it or not, you can generate referrals in a deliberate way as well, so they don't have to be passive. But a lot of times it is, we're just hoping we get referrals, and hope and not a strategy. And tried many different marketing activities and are generally sort of dissatisfied with the outcomes. And so the reason this thing came together as a presentation and as a paper is I started really having, almost all the companies or business people that I talked to and came to me were very dissatisfied with what they were doing in marketing, and they would often state the 4 or 5 people or firms or whatever it was that was, it's like they had PTSD from working with 4 or 5 marketing entities. And I started getting suspicious of that because it seemed like all of them. And I thought, well, the marketing industry must have some issues. Our firm certainly doesn't have that problem. We're trying to, why is it that everybody's so dissatisfied? And so we started something that I don't know if we coined it, but it's forensic marketing research. So every client for the last, 5 years, 6 years, maybe I did it even when I was working with Denery, I don't remember, but looking at all of the old marketing material, trying to figure out what happened, why did this not meet expectations, and it was a very interesting data set. I think we got about 93 companies, and one company had like 10,000 documents. It was unbelievable, and I actually knew some of the people who did the work, so I was able to call them and get both sides of the story. Whenever possible, we would talk to the people who did the work, but do it in an anonymous way. And it was really interesting. So we put it together, and we found some really strong themes. And so that's what we'll be talking about. So if sales is the heart, marketing is the blood. And then these are some stats that I saw that sort of reinforced what I thought I was seeing. Just, a swath of destruction in the marketing industry. And I'm talking about small and medium business. Coke's probably crushing it. But we're talking about real world here. And so that was pretty shocking as well. So I thought we'd start off by getting on the same page with terminology. Terminology is like really important to me, so that we're talking about the same thing, and especially this word marketing, which is pretty problematic. Everything's marketing. I don't know if you know that, but everything is. But in reality, no, it's something very specific, and it comes from the military, actually. And there's marketing, to me, is strategy, and it's a kind of a classical, definition. It's the strategy part. Plan of action, and that's a military word. Plan of action, designed in order to achieve an end, a purpose, together with a system of measures for its accomplishment. Does that sound like marketing? That's Admiral Wiley. And then tactics the study, I don't know why it says the study, because we tend to think of them as activities, but the most effective ways of securing objectives set by the strategy, as in deploying and directing troops, ships, and aircraft against an enemy, dot, dot, dot. And actually the manual goes on to list a whole bunch of other things, even like round counts on each person and all of the, the details and types of vehicles, and it goes on. But strategy and tactics, right? But when I ask that question of audiences and of people, and I love asking it, I get these things in various orders, which are all activities. And my point is not marketing. Marketing. That's what marketing is. And so I think let's just check on my notes here. I think the confusion is that a lot of people are under the impression that marketing is about doing a bunch of activities, usually expensive ones, when really they don't really have a real strategy. They're just buying tactics. And we'll talk about that a little bit. The second thing that I think is pretty important is let's just define what a lead is for our purposes today. For Clarity Marketing Support and our clients, we actually have two kinds of qualified leads, different places. One is marketing qualified, or MQual, we like to call it in our acronyms. They've shown interest in the service and they've taken some action, but you don't know much more about them than that. So Gerald is coming in again. And so we just call that marketing qualified. They're not really ready to be sent to sales yet. They need to be nurtured a bit. And then the second type of lead is sales qualified. That means we've had some contact with them and now we understand if they have interest, paying, budget, decision making, and they're in an actual buying process. So just for clarification as we go on, hopefully that'll make some sense. But we like to split that in two, and that's actually pretty important. But the question is, why all of this in the first place, right? This whole marketing mess, this whole marketing thing, if we back up before the websites and all the pretty pictures and the meetings and the brainstorming, and we back up and just keep backing up, we get to the why question, which is one of my favorite books. What is it called? Start with Why. In the case of marketing and strategy, marketing strategy, I'll try to use that term instead of marketing. We'll say marketing strategy. It's all about risk. How much do you want to take? Do you want to take a moderate amount of risk? Are you comfortable with a lot of risk? Maybe you love to gamble, right? You like to go to the track. Or are you this guy? And that's okay to be that guy. I know some of those guys that are actual stuntmen, and their idea of risk is just very different from mine. And so this is an important consideration when you go into deciding what to do, deciding what your budget is, and then how to implement the right level of planning. It depends on how much risk you're willing to tolerate. And so marketing, in essence, is a risk management strategy. It's lowering your risk that you're going to spend a bunch of money and time and effort and attention on a bunch of things that don't provide a return. And so if your risk tolerance is low, is high, you might do a little more research. You might put a little more money into your plan. If you're sort of like, hey, let's throw some shit on the wall and see what works, you might, oops, I'm sorry, I swore. I swear sometimes. Then you're maybe on the other side of the flaming man end of the continuum. It's okay. It's okay with me. I might not work with you, but it's okay with me. Just so we understand. So here are the 5 factors we found looking at all these marketing programs until we were blue in the face. The big thing that I would say, and I put it as number 1, is really simple. It costs nothing. It might be a little difficult. It's a shift in mindset. It's looking at the marketing function. And my bias is going to be as a C-level person looking at a function, right? So that's what I mean by that. Like, look at that function actually as an iterative process instead of a project or a series of projects. And this is kind of what it looks like, right? Amazingly, it looks similar to every decision-making process that we make in our whole business. But there is a point where at some point marketing got a pass on it. I don't know why. They get to just shout things out and wear crazy haircuts, and I don't know. But everybody else has to do this. And so a process, not a project or series of projects, having structured planning sessions with your team, it's a collaborative process. And that means including sales too in that process. Strategy before tactics. I think I had a version where I had that twice on purpose. Strategy before tactics. And, reducing risk. And then the idea of continuous improvement. That's sort of the whole idea. For example, we tell people, if you're looking at analytics, don't get too hung up on the exact numbers. Look at the trends. Make sure that the right numbers are going in the right direction as much of the time as possible. And it's really about the trend. And so that's why we have metrics, and as we go, that'll make a little more sense to put that into context. This kind of gets at both of these questions about how to budget, and we'll talk about testing, but how to budget and attract, let's just say, the right clients. The right clients for me are also friendly clients. And then who have a budget, which is actually important. That budget could be low, and that may be okay depending on how you deliver value, or maybe they want to buy a farm. They might need some level of budget. So during the planning process, this is when you're really going to get, you're going to start strategy first. Here's where I put it twice, strategy first. You're going to get your arms around those things and make those decisions. For example, budgeting, if you focus on the cost of acquisition, and we'll talk about it more, but as the basis of your budgeting, you're going to kind of understand, where are we going to see a return most likely, how long is that going to take, because you've had some deliberate process around it, as opposed to saying, well, I think we should spend 15%, or last year we spent this much. There's a way to do it. So testing is a whole nother subject. We'll talk more about that later, but attracting the most friendly clients and who have budget. The marketing plan's a specific document, so part of it is going to have tight customer profiles, in such a way that they could be entered into a database so you can actually find those people, but enough detail, pain points, what are their perceptions, beliefs. I'll show you an example. But this was what goes in the plan, and it's the important thing is it's the process again. It's the journey of going through it. It isn't any binder you receive at the end. It's that you sat down with your team in an organized way, and you asked all the hard questions, and then you were authentic and honest about the places where maybe you were weak or you didn't have good information. People, processes, and information is basically what we're looking for. So that's why guys like me facilitate those teams, and you don't have to know a lot of this. This is a process. Gets everyone on the same page, everybody participates, helps you make better decisions faster. But the reason I share that is that all plans aren't created equal. A lot of times when we were looking at these programs, they would, we'd say, well, do you have a marketing plan? They'd say, yeah, absolutely. And there was a variation of two answers. It's in our heads, or here it is, and it wasn't really a marketing plan because it didn't have the components of a marketing plan, if that makes any sense. It was some kind of plan, but it didn't have a lot of the components. And I like this quote: "In preparing for battle, I've always found that plans are useless, but planning is indispensable." I like that. I think that's the point. And by the way, that mentions strategy. I don't know. Here's an example of what we call a complete, most ideal customer. And I'm going to send this deck out to everybody after this, so everybody that registered to the video. So it's pretty detailed, right? And some people ask, well, why do you care what their gender is or how much money they make? I'll tell you why. You're going to talk to an audience that has an average income of, let's say, $50,000 an hour in a high school education. You're going to talk to them differently than someone that owns a $30 million company. Yes? So that's going to affect your tone and how you, a lot of things. And then I like to ask about what do they believe about the product or service? What are their perceptions? What's their primary needs? It looks like this is actually for clarity. So a little self-indulgent. I'm showing my own client profile. Isn't that awesome? Pain points. I always like to include pain points. I'm a Sandler believer. I'm a believer for 15 years. And sales flat or declining, growth slower than expected, current agency not meeting expectations. You want to reduce marketing and sales costs. Simple as that. And so if, and by the way, you may have 3 or 4 or 5. I hope you don't have more than 5, but you may, and you may have to have separate ones. And again, that goes back to process, right? If you have this as a process, you can sit down and pretty much nail this stuff off. Might have to make some decisions, though, which is the hard part. Factor number 3. So factor 1 was change your mindset. Factor 2 is have a plan. During that planning process, excuse me, we just can't emphasize this enough. Get data from outside your organization. I'm going to bare my heart and lift my kimono all at the same time. Anytime I really needed to push my firm, my firm used to be a lot bigger. Now, I'm semi-retired. It's me. It's my wife works with me here. She's creative director and all that. But back in the day, it was big office downtown, overhead, and employees. And when we wanted to get into that multi-million-dollar range, I brought in marketing people for my marketing firm. And the reason is there's this, I don't know if Confucius actually said it. Now in the days of the internet, you don't know who said what. But the frog at the bottom of the well sees only the well. And the frog on the top of the well sees the entire world. And so I was younger, but at least smart enough to know I have confirmation bias, and that's really what it's about. And of course, Samuel Clemens has a famous saying there. Here's what is the only thing that actually matters. If there's only one kind of research you can do, talk to your customers. There's a way to do it so that it's actual scientific, actual research, and that's where people like me or research people come in. They can put together the instrument and the methods. A lot of times we actually have executive level conversations with a group of clients randomly selected, but they're the ones that matter. So he's got like a pile of cash behind him. I like that. And you're biased. This is also part of factor 3. It's 2 parts. The other part of the data that I think is more important is most important, not more important, but most important is competitive analysis. And I'm talking about a kind of a different type of competitive analysis than when you do product development and you're looking very closely at features and you're looking at pricing, and you're looking at, things really related to the product. For the purposes of B2B lead generation, you want to be assessing the sophistication of your competitors, or let's say your top 5, or it's part of our process, but and then where are they weak and what can you exploit? Where are they strong? Where are you weak in relation to where they're strong? And so, what kinds of messages are they saying? How do they present themselves? What methods are working well for the biggest, the big gorilla in the market? What's working best for them? What are they saying? So it's a little bit different, but competitive. It's not intelligence, it's information at first. It needs to be analyzed and correlated to be intelligence. And so I just want to throw that out there. There's a way to do this so you get good things. And I've actually found competitors of my clients at full marketing plans. I can't share it with them ethically, but I can say that it will inform my recommendations. And we've done some really interesting undercover trade show work. And you know, it's all white hat stuff, but that was fantastic. You know, but what are your competitors doing? How can you do better? Weaknesses, exploit them, be everything that your competitor is not. So, simple example, if you're a flower shop and your ads are full of flowers, you might want to think about trying to be different. How many people recognize this guy? Well, you can't really, you can wave, I guess. So that's Peter Drucker. This is what he says. Notice his name is also Peter. I'm just saying. I don't know if there's any correlation. Marketing is a marathon, not a sprint. Resources. If you have no resources, you can't go to market. Marketing programs need time to deliver MR or ROs. That's marketing return on investment. Flexibility. Market change is rapid and consistent. Unless commitment is made, there are no promises and hopes. There are only promises and hopes, but no plans. Now, process. Remember, this is it. This is the process. He approves. It's the scientific method. So if you're familiar with the scientific method, it's pretty much the same process with marketing. You theorize, that's your goals and objectives. You research, you test, you put it out there. That's the experiment part. You start getting the metrics in. You analyze those metrics. Was your hypothesis correct? You change your approach. You start at the beginning again. That's what marketing is. So here's a bonus factor. That was number 5. I'm going fast because I'm hoping that we'll have a discussion afterwards, and I want to get into these questions and any questions that you might have. We'll just open up everybody's mics. So here's a reality that a lot of people won't tell you. The thing is, it's kind of a harsh reality. It's almost like a physics of business. Either you do everything yourself, or you pay someone to do it. But you got to do it. And even if you pay an intern or employee or your whatever it is, either you're going to learn it and do it if you're small and you have no resources, or you have very, very limited resources, or you're going to have to pay someone else to do it. So that's the two choices. Now, it seems obvious. I'll tell you why. A lot of small companies, because they have limited resources, they want to kind of split that baby down the middle and do a little bit of stuff, right? And if that little bit of stuff works, then they'll do more. Does that sound familiar to anyone? Because we hear that all the time. And the truth is, it's going to get Zippo, and we're going to talk about why. But they're surrounded by companies, firms, web developers, SEO, all those tactical people that know it's not going to work. I hope they know. If they're competent, they know. But they're still going to take whatever little that you have, right? They're just not going to tell you what I'm going to tell you. Marketing takes time, it takes resources. Wherever you get them from, it's going to take time, money, labor, and skills. Not just the time to do all the work, time to become effective. Now, I hesitated adding, I added this last slide at the last minute. You'll see why I hesitated. But I think this is important. This idea, right? We're going to try a little and we're going to see if it works. And if it works, we'll do more. It's not about me as an agency wanting you to do more stuff. I don't get paid by that. I charge a fee for my facilitation. This is just the truth that nobody wants to tell you because they're actually after your check and not trying to solve your problem. The idea is that the curve is a linear curve. So, easy numbers. We spend 100 grand, we expect 200 grand back. We don't have 100 grand. What are you, crazy? We're going to spend 50 grand. That means we'd get 100 grand, right? No, it doesn't work that way. Think of it like a big flywheel. And if you're at the beginning and your big giant flywheel is not moving, as if you're early in your your company's life cycle, it needs a lot of energy to start moving. And as it moves, you can expend less energy or resources on it. So that's really what's going on. So I don't know if that, I'm not a math genius. I don't know if that means it's a logarithmic curve. What it means is this, where these, I can't point to it, I don't have a pointer of any kind, but you see where all the lines come together and it says 100% ROI and 50% ROI. Those are inflection points, and the curve that's going up and the green dots is the revenue that your marketing's bringing in. And your marketing investment, let's say it stays the same through the year, that inflection point where it turns to green ROI is not a fixed point. That's the trick. It isn't going to be 50-50. Chances are you're going to spend all of your money and get actually zero from it. And I think that was the most common thing that we heard. They would say things like, well, look, we sent emails, we tried that, didn't get a deal out of it, not a single deal, or PR, or trade shows, right? But if I ask a few more questions, they sent 30 emails one time and it didn't work. And so they're like, well, email doesn't work for us. Okay. We have to start small because we don't have any resources, right? What I say, learn it or find the resources. Or you know what to expect. It will truly be an expense. It will not be an investment. And that makes my heart hurt. So a little bit of truth for you. Let's open it up for discussion.